Hello viewers, here is a Patton high velocity fan. This is a 20-inch model. It's the model number U2-20. Here's a look at the informations. There's the model number. And then there's the motor information. It's a Macmillan motor, 2.6 amps. Dated October of 1998. And I think there were multiple versions of this fan. I believe there was one that had the blue motor. I'm not entirely certain. This was one of the most sought after fans for my collection because there was one of these in, I think it was my 3rd grade classroom, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever because that was the first time I really got to see one of these up close in person, because we never had any fans like this at home, and at the time I really liked powerful fans, and so I was very fond of these, and I wanted one for many years, and it wasn't until last year that I finally found one, a really nice mint condition instance that you see here. I don't remember if the one in the classroom was had the blue motor or the black. I don't know. I remember the teacher still had the box for it. It was kept over by where the coats was hung, and she always ran it on low, which which drove me nuts because I wanted it to be on high. Because this was back when you still went to school and it was hot. And nowadays they close school if it's like above 75 degrees and people may break a sweat. They close the schools. Oh no, we gotta toughen up a little bit. But we still went to school when it was hot. And in June, I mean, there was days it was 90 something degrees and it was in that classroom and there was no air conditioner and it was hot. And she would never put the thing any faster than low. And there was one day that it had come unplugged for whatever reason, and I had turned it up to, I think I turned it up to medium, and so when she had plugged it back in, it went up to medium, she quickly turned it back down to low. So it never ran on anything other than low, and she always had it pointed up at the ceiling, so no one even really felt the breeze all that much. The room was too big to do it that way. I guess in theory you could point it up at the ceiling and it was, it would move all the air around the room, but their room was too big and the ceiling wasn't flat, so it just wasn't very effective. But this was probably the most appropriate fan of any of the classrooms. So I remember a lot of the classroom just had like a real small fan. I think there was a couple of different I think there was 2 classrooms that we had in 3rd grade. And the other one had like a Doracraft 12-inch oscillating fan or something. I mean, it didn't do a thing, but this at least kind of did something. I was just thinking about going to school, and with the situation we have going on right now, I can't even imagine going to school right now. I was listening to a program on the radio the other morning, and they were saying that you got to look at it as an improvement because last year they didn't have schools in person, at least in this part of the world. It was all on the computer. Now, at least this year, I guess they're in the classroom, but they still got those stupid face things on. So the guy was saying that you got to look at it as an improvement over last year, and I agree with that to an extent. I really do believe that we have to have a good attitude, and we have to look at life with a good attitude, because a lot of the situation that you're in is what you make of it, and you can make it worse or better for yourself based on the way you think about it. But at the same time, like when I found myself in high school, I had a great time in high school. We was just doing crazy things and nothing mattered, and it was a good time. But there's people in that situation now that they didn't have it. I mean, they were stuck at home, so they're missing out on life. I can't imagine. I really can't. But anyways, so anyway, that's irrelevant to the situation. to the video here. So this fan, really cool fan. I remember another variant. There was a Hampton Bay branded variant, I believe. I remember seeing one at a local restaurant. It was a sandwich store. I think it was Subway's, and it was on a stand, and it was more or less the same fan on a big tall stand, and it was branded Hampton Bay. I remember seeing that one quite a bit. I was somewhere a couple years ago, some kind of a, not a thrift store, but like one of those stores that will go to an estate and take all the stuff out of the house and then resell it. And they had the floor version of that Hampton Bay. So I guess it was more or less this fan with the Hampton Bay logo. And I didn't get it, and the reason was stupid, and it bothers me to this day that I didn't get it, because they're getting very hard to find. These fans, they seem to show up pretty much unused, or they don't show up. And I think the problem is that the bearings, people didn't oil them, and it's a very high performance fan. It runs at a high speed and it gets pretty hot, and so a lot of these fail due to lack of lubrication, which of course is a user error. It's not the fan's fault that nobody oiled it. It's a user error situation. But the point is, these things are getting to be 2 decades old now, and a lot of them are gone because people didn't oil them and the bearings is locking up due to lack of lubrication. They seem to show up in this condition when they show up, and somebody had theorized, and I think this was a really good theory, somebody had theorized that they show up in this condition a lot because people buy them back in the day thinking they're going to use them in their living room or something, and they're just too powerful. They never end up using them, and so they'll sit in an attic or they'll sit in a closet or whatever, and then they get discovered some odd number of years later, and then they surface and they sell them. So that makes perfect sense to me. That could very well be the case, but I'm glad I have this one. This is a really nice instance of it. It runs good. In excellent condition. It's got plenty of life left in it. It's got pretty much all of the life left in it, and I'll keep it oiled so it should run for decades to come easy. So let's turn this thing around. Oh jeez, how could I forget that? So I'm talking about high school and I forgot this. How in the world could I forget that? There was a local pizza joint here, and I think I've talked about this restaurant before. It was called Adriana's Pizza. And it was a total ghetto dive. It was the restaurant physically was terrible. It was falling apart. There's no air conditioners, just hot in here. But they had the best pizza. And it seems to be a going trend with restaurants. Some of the physically worse restaurants have the best food. And I remember going to that for pizza all the time when I was in high school. And they closed a couple of years after that, which was a shame. But they had one of these fans, at least one, maybe even two. One of these U2-20s that was always going. I think it was a slightly newer one, because I remember the motor. It didn't look like a regular full-size motor, but they had one there for all intents and purposes. It looked pretty much the same from the front. So that was another fun memory I had of these fans. It's got it's not paint splatter on here, it's just dust. I don't know. It's just been sitting here in the studio. I don't know where all this dust came from. This isn't even like regular household dust. I have to get that off, but it's not. I know it looks like it's got paint splatter on it, but it's not paint splatter. It's just dust. It's got a 3-prong cord. It's kind of a short cord. I'd say it's no more than 6 or 8 feet. Probably just 6. Yeah, it's not that long. 3-pin, of course, no fuse. And the switch has some information on there. Model number U2-20, 120 volts, 60 hertz, 2.7 amps. Slight discrepancy there, because I think the motor said 2.6. Yeah, it does. The motor says 2.6. So there's a slight discrepancy there, but nothing like some of the other fans. You get those, like the box fans, the P223s and stuff. and they'll say like 2.2 amps, and then the motor's is 2.8 or something. It's way off. This is pretty close for what it's worth. And the motor, I mean, you can see it's got no hours on it. The windings are in flawless condition. There's no dust in there. I think this thing was pretty much unused when it came to me, and I haven't really gotten a whole lot of use out of it, so it's still unused. So let's turn this thing back around, get it going. And this fan is the reason why I like the TPI fans so much, because they look very similar, and the sound reminds me a lot of these. There was one other time that I saw these. I think it might have been the Hampton Bay version, if I'm recalling correctly. There was a furniture store. It has closed down. I was just thinking the other day, so many of the stores that I remember, even just from like a decade ago, are gone. And a lot of the fans are gone. But anyways, there was a furniture store. We had bought something from there. My mother was buying some stuff from there. Some stools or something. I don't remember. Anyways, in the back of the store, there was a doorway, like a regular man door. And in the doorway was one of these fans. I think it was the Hampton Bay brand of fan blowing in. And that thing was on high. And it sounded so cool. Because it's really got an insane amount of power on high. So anyways, that's one of the reasons why I always like to put these in the doorways, because of that. So let's get this cam set up here. That should be out of the wind stream. And we'll go ahead and start this up on the low. Now, unlike the TPI fans, this has a pretty nice slow load to it. And I remember that about the one in the classroom. It ran pretty slow on low. It was relatively quiet. The noise level is probably why it was run on low, because these do get pretty loud. It's making some pretty interesting motor sounds. And the power draw is 1.68 amps. And it's moving some air. And the motor seems kind of louder than the blades even. So surprisingly good balance too. It's really strong. Okay, let's go up to the medium. It's still in pretty good balance. I'm surprised. I didn't think it was in good balance for some reason, but it's not bad. It's still fairly quiet. I mean, it's you can hear it, but it's not that bad. That TPI fan is really quite loud. I think that this blade set must be better, because it's got to be going slower. You know, it's got maybe a better pitch to it or something. I don't know. It seems like it pushes more air at a lot lower speed. Okay, let's go to the high. Well, not bad. I should really compare it side by side, but this doesn't seem anywhere near as loud as the TPI feeling. It's definitely as powerful, I think. Runs very, very smooth. And the sound of it is different than the TPI. This is a kind of a lower frequency sound, whereas the TPI sound is very kind of like mid-harsh range frequency. This isn't anywhere near as obnoxious. It's not quiet by any means, but for the amount of air it's moving, it's pretty good. Now, I've never oiled this or anything, so this is just in as found condition here. But the bearings seem like they're adequately lubricated for now. I will oil them before I use it though. Alright, let's see if we can get a startup sound here. We'll begin with high. Not a super loud startup, but it's definitely there. I suspect that motor hum probably would go away after the motor warms up when it's been running for a while. Okay, let's do medium now. That was pretty good. The blade's clock isn't quite perfect, so I gotta fix that. Not exactly the same length either, but it's pretty well balanced. It's not really far out of line at all. It's good enough that I really wouldn't even mess with it much. And now here's the low. Yeah, you know what? Even just those couple of minutes of operation seem to have warmed it up enough that it's not making that motor sound much anymore. Of course, it's hard to tell for sure with the furnace running, but it seems like it's pretty quiet. Now I'm just eating up time here to see if the thing will shut off before I cut the video, but I don't think it's gonna.